Michael Horowitz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So, what's the deal with computer programming?
Well, I'm glad glad you asked that. Uh, that my IRS tax forms have been filled out as a computer programmer as my profession since 1972.
Mhm,
So if you do the math, I think that's 53 years.
mhm,
Wait, yes. So the deal with computer programming is it just got made obsolete by artificial intelligence. And now all you have to do is tell a computer what you want, and it will write the program.
mhm,
So finally, I've been replaced with the device that I wrote the programs for.
mhm,
So the deal with computer programming is the deal with everything else in the world in technology is things are advancing very quickly, and the tools available to those with the privilege to access them are unbelievable and hard to master.
mhm,
And I fear others will be left behind by the expense of it all.
mhm,
So um, there are three areas that we should talk about
mhm,
where computer programming and computer science are converging in a hurry to something we haven't seen before. And I think you may have heard of this thing called the singularity,
mhm,
where a group of people, computer scientists, believe that in 5 to 10 years, there'll be a general computer intelligence that'll far surpass the intelligence of all the people ever on the planet, and that we won't have to work again.
mhm,
And who are we? That's a good question.
mhm,
So that's one thing. And the other thing is how every device that we have and use are connected to a network and are smart enough to act on their own.
mhm.
Um, I'm getting a priority interrupt from a hedge fund. Can
Mhm.
I pause for a second?
Sure. Let's see.
With computer,
Mhm,
when you're asking what the deal is with computer programming, the things that are going to come up are AI and the build out of the data centers. But in terms of the near future and things that one needs to think about, um, there's a time coming very soon where the smartest AI called general artificial intelligence is smarter than all the people on the planet, as I was saying. And it can do any job, scientific or otherwise, that's knowledge work better than any human, including programming computers. And already you have with Google Gemini, the latest AI is writing all the software for the future Google. Google is no longer has let go of all their programmers. So the question of what's the deal with computer programming is kind of like what's the deal with buggy whips? Once Henry Ford put the Model T out. Um, you don't need to do it anymore, except as an artisanal craft.
mhm,
And just like lawyers, doctors, accountants, and management consultants,
mhm,
they should be finding a different kind of work, maybe plumbing and electrician work.
mhm, mhm,
So that's the deal with computer programming as far as nobody be able to get a job doing it anymore.
mhm,
However, computers and AI will be improving themselves for the next 3 to 5 years in a way that we can't even follow And all of the big tech companies are now having their software written by their AI.
Mhm.
And that's not today, that's as of 6 months ago. And the Google Gemini product is mostly created by AI.
Mhm.
And it's the hottest thing out there as of last week.
Mhm.
The other things in computer programming are the fact that there is no game that a computer is not better than a human being that exists anymore. The deep thought from Google and the stuff from IBM and others have beaten every single game that they could play, and that now includes the stock market and Battle Royale and Minecraft. They all, piece of cake for the AI. They can win and figure out new ways to win that we never did.
Mhm.
In science, in physics research, in astronomy, the data from the Webb telescope couldn't be interpreted without the computer programs that interpret the data, and the data it's bringing back breaks all of the physical theory we had before, sort of like Galileo when he looked at the moons of Jupiter with a telescope. So we're in an age like, I don't know, the end of the 15th and 16th centuries, where a whole new science and a whole new way of living is about to emerge that human beings are not really prepared to deal with, in my opinion. So that's the deal with computer programming.
Mhm.
Um, and the social and economic consequences of these things are interesting to examine, perhaps.
Mhm.
Any
Okay.
questions?
A question on the statement that AI will be able to do X better than humans. Let's use X as an accountant, right? So 5 years from now, AI will be able to do the job.
Today, not
Okay,
5 years, today.
fair enough. So let's play with that statement.
Accountants, lawyers, actuaries there's no one I know who is better than Claude or Gemini.
Now that's your determination, right? But
Hey, you're asking my opinion,
right.
although I would suggest that my opinion has more value than most.
What if the AI is wrong? Say Claude is wrong and a human accountant is right. Who determines who's a better accountant?
I would not get in a Tesla Uber
Mhm.
because you would crash.
Mhm.
If AI is wrong, a Tesla would not work. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, there are no more taxi drivers. In China, there are no more drivers, and driverless cars are taking over and are very cheap. So I don't know how one could support the proper. It's like saying technology is broken. It's always a double-edged sword. Uh, it, but technology makes things better and worse at the same time. A sword could kill, it can also defend. Fire warms you up and gives you light, but it also burns down your house.
Mhm.
All right? So it takes a rational, intelligent agent making decisions about the use of technology that determines whether or not it's effective or not. But to argue that you will have, if you're a lawyer, an accountant, or a doctor, that you will have a job other than supervising computers, I think is a lost argument at this point.
Okay.
But that's my opinion.
Right. But if we stick with that, say accountant that already Claude is a better accountant than
Anyone who
typical
crunches
human.
data to produce results,
Mhm,
a computer will do it better. Anyone that explores new territory and invents and creates new things, a computer doesn't do that. AI doesn't do that.
mhm,
And AI solves problems based on data from the past.
mhm,
It does not think about the future.
mhm,
You can ask it to make things, but all it's doing is completing the sentence like Google does. Okay? Human beings now, the people in AI and computers talk about two possibilities: the Star Trek communist future or the techno feudalist future. All right. So the techno feudalist future is that is envisioned by Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Andreessen Horowitz, which is which is not unlike David Friedman's um, philosophy of anarcho-capitalism, where you'll have a dozen very successful companies that you'll choose between to provide all your services, and they'll do it better than governments. And you won't need governments. However, you don't need a lot of people. So, what are you going to do with the people if there's no war, famine, or disease? That's an interesting question.
mhm,
All right. The other side is Star Trek communism, where the AI means everybody has enough. Nobody's hungry. Nobody needs to be clothed. Everybody can go off and explore the universe, providing they obey the rules of the Enterprise, which is the non interference directive,
mhm,
which I can agree on. It's kind of don't, don't fuck with someone unless they're fucking with you.
mhm,
So, in between those futures are a lot of fucked up politicians
mhm,
that can make a lot of us miserable until we get to some place where we have this under control.
mhm.
So that takes us off into paths of politics and religion if you want to go there.
Okay. Potentially. So, what is AI?
Well, AI literally is artificial intelligence, but what we mean right now, most people are referring to large language models like ChatGPT
Mhm,
and the like, because that's what's in the news.
mhm,
But in reality, artificial intelligence encompasses way more than just large language models. It incorporates other methods of achieving solutions in an intelligent way. One of which is I'm familiar with is called Permion, which deals with knowledge represented as graphs rather than language. So the other forms of artificial intelligence have to do with expert systems like medical systems, where you train not just the how to deal with natural language. So ChatGPT is really just a fancy version of Google, where Google would complete your sentence
mhm,
while you're typing it in based on everything else people had entered. What they found out when they did research is that they could simulate a conversation this way.
mhm,
And they started adding more and more conversations to train them. And all of a sudden, you couldn't tell the difference between your conversation with the computer and with a person. And that is something called the Turing test,
mhm,
which was a test invented in the 50s to determine whether a computer was intelligence. And that was if you gave a person a conversation with a computer and a conversation with a real person, and they couldn't tell the difference, then the computer was intelligence. That test was passed 10 years ago.
mhm,
All right. But now the test is, are the artificial intelligence behind the language processing something sentient, like a creature that has rights? And that's a question that people have asked. My opinion is no. It's just a fancy version of Google, and it's not smart at all. It's good at fooling us into having a conversation, but it's really a masturbation device.
Mhm.
So, if you're familiar, you can buy them also on Amazon. Um, but the real artificial intelligence are the things that make surgeons able to do things like fix a prostate when they couldn't do it before because they couldn't move the surgical instruments, as well as a robot arm under the control of a program with artificial intelligence that is responding to their voice, not their hands. So you don't need to have a talented surgeon because a robot does it much better.
Mhm.
It could be precise to an arbitrary degree.
Mhm.
So if you can go to a country or a place, I don't know, like Prospero in the Honduras, where you don't have an FDA, you could get surgery to fix your prostate that you can't get anywhere else because they let you use illegal robots.
Mhm.
In France, there are devices that you could use you can't use here.
Mhm.
In this country, we have perhaps the worst healthcare system there is.
Mhm.
Just say it.
Mhm.
So, artificial intelligence, not large language models, can improve everything where technology is used.
Mhm.
Airplanes for war, drones, nuclear missiles can't be launched. You can swarm over them with drones now.
Mhm.
We proved that in Ukraine.
Mhm.
So you can't even launch an ICBM because you can flood the zone with drones. And the drones could be hidden in the ground, and artificial intelligence can orchestrate them to take out the propulsion system. And we're all deploying these weapons now.
Mhm.
So nuclear weapons are obsolete. So people don't realize this. Things are changing so fast.
Mhm.
Okay. This is the 21st century, and we're almost a quarter through. Wait till you'll see the second half.
Mhm.
But, I am a refugee from the future, can I say?
Mhm.
And it's really nice in the future, but we got to get past the next 10 years.
Mhm.
Fortunately, I may be checking out,
Mhm.
but that's a separate story.
Okay.
You have to hang in there and help people get through the tough part.
Mhm.
Although I do like your generated background, it makes you look like a character from The Fountainhead as opposed to a resident of Vela.
Got it.
But I
So,
have your actual view,
so
not your phony view.
there you
And
go.
there it is, but it's shady like me.
So I'm thinking about that journey from 1972 to present, and I'm trying to understand this, I guess, this breakthrough where something is now considered AI. What's that threshold where something is, oh, this is AI versus just a natural
Well,
evolution
well,
of technology over the past 50 plus
in
years? What's that? Go ahead. But when does that break up? Now this is AI, but it wasn't previously. I feel like this is just a
all right.
natural
Well, the best
evolution.
example of that, in 1972, I had a psych professor who told me that a computer will never play chess as well as a human because it couldn't be that intelligent. And as my thesis, I wrote a computer chess program. Okay. However, I could beat the program. All right. I was better than the program I wrote. But I realized I should not become a professional chess player because I could write programs to play chess.
Mhm.
All right. 10 years ago, a program called Deep Blue beat the world champion, Gary Kasparov,
Mhm.
in chess. Currently, a $99 program you could buy as an app for your phone plays better than any world champion ever played.
Mhm.
So in the game of chess, okay, computers have mastered it to the standpoint that humans don't even compete against computers anymore. In fact, there are two kinds of chess tournaments for humans only, and tournaments where you're allowed to use your computer to assist you. Okay. The interesting thing is that a computer against a human almost always wins. A computer and a human against a computer almost always wins.
Mhm.
A computer, so the team of a computer and a human in competition is better than a human alone or a computer alone. And that's a fact, Jack. You could look it up. All right. It's tournament results. All right. There's no argument about who won a chess game. Right. So that's chess. Chess was considered a complicated game for a computer because there were a lot of the total number of possible moves was huge. But it didn't compare to the Asian game of Go, which was considered way more complicated. And computers became the Go champion 5 years ago with a program called AlphaGo from Google when it beat the world champion Korean player. And now, okay, you could buy for $99 a Go program that will beat the world champion. All right. In the last 3 years, okay, the AI departments that did these games have taken on harder games. One is Minecraft. The other is what's the game with the battle royale, uh, and it can assume a player and it will always win. And now they're doing hedge funds and institutional financial institutions. And the preliminary results are they outperform any hedge fund portfolio manager.
Mhm.
And BlackRock and all the major financial companies are now deploying AI and firing their humans.
Mhm.
I happen to be a consultant to those people.
Mhm.
Anyway, I think that might have answered your question a little.
A
So in
little.
72, my college professor said it won't happen. In 2022, it was over already.
Mhm.
So that's 50 years.
Okay.
The first idea of doing a chess program was proposed in 1950s by a Russian and named Botvinnik, who also happened to be a world champion. And he wrote a program which I used as the basis for my program in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, that's games. All right.
Mm-hmm.
How about computer navigation?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember ever printing a map and using it in a car to get from one place to another? By looking at a map? Do you remember doing that? I used to do that
I did.
15 years ago.
For sure, I did. Yes.
Do you do that now?
No.
When was the last time you looked at a map in a car other than a GPS?
It's been a while.
How have the Jeep? Well, this is a loaded question.
Mhm.
I rented a car yesterday. It was not a Tesla. It asked me, where do you want to go? I told it,
Mhm.
and I didn't have to do anything else.
Okay. Well,
That's artificial intelligence at work.
fair enough. I guess my question is the threshold, right? You've been in the industry for many years.
Threshold was when it beat the world champion.
So, I mean AI. So we have this buzzword now, AI, and I,
It's not a buzzword.
well,
It's a
it is though.
label in science for the last
Earlier,
75 years. So for you to call it a buzzword is insulting to scientists who work on it. Okay,
when I see
a buzzword
ChatGPT,
would be what's it called? ChatGPT is a buzzword.
so you're
Artificial intelligence is a label to describe a scientific discipline. However, I'm getting too rigorous in my
not
definitions.
at all. I
I am
appreciate that.
autistic. This happens to me. I take my definitions seriously.
So do I, and that's why I want to stick with this then. So artificial intelligence goes back to the 1950s. Is that what I just heard?
It goes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. So, but it's becoming more of a buzzword on a day-to-day basis
Well,
than it
what
was.
words, what phrases are not given social media?
It's a lot of branding around it. For instance, what I heard from you, and I could totally resonated with me when you said that when I look at Chat GPT, it to me it's the new Google, and Google is just an advertising platform at this point. So it's just if-then scenarios, it's predictive language, it's binary. It's to me, it's nothing revolutionary when I look at ChatGPT. It's kind of just it's the next step of Google search engine. So I'm going back to
100%.
right. So 1950. That's what I'm really curious about is AI. We hear that those two letters all the time now, right? But this goes back to the talk to me about the 1950s then.
Well, so let's go back to your original question is what's the deal with computer programming? All right. So given the season, give you the broad context to answer your question.
Mhm.
Given the season, we have the Christmas Carol, the ghosts of Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future.
Mhm.
Give me a little liberty to go into the ghost of computer programming past
Mhm.
because it goes back a lot longer than people think.
Mhm.
All right. So I won't go back to some of these machines that they discover in ancient Greek ruins, little crank devices that they can't quite figure out, but were some sort of navigational or computational thing associated with astronomy, right? So people were building clockworks where they could grind that would imitate the motion of the stars for thousands of years. And that's kind of introduces the idea of maybe I could make a mechanical representation that mimics the real world so that I could understand it better. So that's kind of the ancient, beginning of automation. Okay. So the word artificial, okay, distinguished when used with intelligence, really means a thinking machine. Okay. That's what, okay. And in our world, you don't have to have a physical machine because everyone's connected. But once upon a time, there were only boxes with cranks and gears. All right. Now, flash forward to just around the time of the printing press. Okay. People were making music boxes and they were making cuckoo clocks. Right. And music boxes, if you ever took them apart, have these bands with things pointing up that pull against the string as they rotate, and they have patterns. Okay, that pattern is the same as an IBM punch card, and that's where that pattern came from. So somewhere around the 1600s, okay, they came up with something called a jacquard loom. Instead of a spinning wheel, they came up with a device that you could set various switches. And then when you turn the crank, the yarn would go in and it would weave them into a pattern. That was called the jacquard loom. And the way you program the loom to make the patterns is the first computer program. Okay? And in the history of computer science, they usually reference that, the Jacquard loom. All right? In the middle of the 1600s, you had the first philosopher invent the first computer language. It was the philosopher Leibniz, and he invented computer programming by converting language into symbols that formed operations, and he called this the logical calculus. Okay, so that was in the 1630s or 1650s. Okay, flash forward to the late 18th century. There was a guy named Boole, a mathematician, who created something called Boolean logic, which instead of having numbers based on 10, or like the Babylonians did on 60, okay, he said only zeros and ones. We could do math with just two digits, 0 and 1. And that's called Boolean mathematics. And the Leibniz logic for Boolean is basically binary computer language. Okay. Then flash forward to the turn of the century, 1900s to 2000, the IBM had a typewriter they had invented, but the governments of the world needed to count people. And so they invented a punch card that you could type with a typewriter and punch cards, and then you could submit these cards into a device that would read them and tabulate all the numbers for you using Boolean algebra from Boole and the code that came from music boxes, which the guy who worked at IBM was named Hollerith. So it became called Hollerith cards. And by the way, the Nazis used these to count Jews, and IBM was implicated in the Holocaust. But that's a side story. All right, so here we go in the 1920s. We've got punch cards. We could we could tabulate them. We could read them into Boolean, into numbers. We could do all sorts of arithmetic with the numbers. And then all of a sudden, we have World War II. And we have the discovery of something called atomic energy. And the biggest problem in the war is calculating the path of a projectile shell out of a cannon so you can accurately take down defenses. And so they hired women who they called computers to do the calculations on how to fire the shells. Meanwhile, in England, they discovered a decoding machine called the Enigma machine. And a mathematician named Alan Turing was given the assignment of cracking the Enigma code. And he says, you know what? I will take all these things that these people are using, and I'll also use the vacuum tubes from radar that we've invented and radio, and we'll build something I'll call a digital computer. Okay? Before Turing, and this is 1943, and there's a movie about it. I think the Enigma game or the Secrets game, whatever. What's his name? Dr. Strange plays Turing, and he's good. So Turing breaks the code by inventing the digital computer. And you know where they send it? They send the machine after they break the code to Princeton, New Jersey, and they rename it ENIAC, ENIAC, which stands for some computer thing. And they use it together with the research department of the Army at Picatinny Arsenal in Dover, New Jersey, to calculate the trajectory of nuclear shells to be fired out of a cannon that my father was developing the fuse for. Which brings me into the picture. How'd you like that? Are you with me so far? I've gone 5,000 years in 10 minutes. Not so bad. You could take 10 seconds to catch up.
I'm with you. Going back to ancient Greece, we have thinking machines. We have a way to understand the world.
So we have this computer called ENIAC that can calculate how to set up a cannon and fire a nuclear missile so that it hits its target. And the cannon gets deployed in the 50s to every place that there's a border with communist countries. Korea, on the border with North Korea, Guam, so it could hit North Korea and China, West Germany, so it could hit East Germany if tanks are coming in. And my dad was traveling all over to test the fuses, including Israel. All right. So in 1972, I get a job at Picatinny Arsenal. Well, wait. Before that, though, I'm sitting minding my own business in a math class in high school, 1968, and they roll in this giant machine. It was the size of 3 refrigerators on their side. They rolled it in. I said, "What's that?" They said, "It's an IBM 1620 mini computer." I said, "A mini computer? You mean this does what those things I read about that take up a whole building?" They go, "Yeah, it's a 1620. Here, I'll turn it on for you." Meanwhile, I was listening to the Yankee game on my transistor radio, and all I could get was static and noise once he turned it on. So he left, and I went down and I started playing with the switches. And I learned that if I threw the switches the right way, I could make my transistor radio play a tone. So after a few weeks, I was able to play music by throwing the switches on this computer. And then I got sent to detention because I wasn't supposed to touch it. At any rate, that was my first encounter with a computer. 1968, it was an IBM 1620. So I get a job working for my dad, not my dad, but for Picatinny Arsenal in the Department of the Army Management Information Directorate as a computer aide. And that's where I generated 2 boxes of Hollerith punch cards that I submitted to guys in white coats who would run it on their computer, which was not an IBM 1620, but a Kronos Cyber supercomputer network. And I would get my chess one move, I would get back the next day in a printout. A little picture of a chess set. So that was my start. The question is that we're trying to get to is where's the threshold where it went from, an interesting, precocious hobbyist project to, oh my God, there's a new species on the planet and we've got to step aside. All right, so we're not quite at that point. However, I'm a good ambassador to our future machine overlords. So if you want a pleasant future, you should be nice to me. All right. So the threshold is going to be, okay, when nobody who graduates college can find a job. Okay, I believe that will be this spring. And the only ones who get jobs are those who already have them, and two people get fired for every job they get promoted to. Until the only ones with jobs are the people who don't have to work anymore, and everyone else is doing janitorial services. Sorry. And they're going to be robots anyway. So we got to find something for 90% of the population to do. Because they're not going to be clothed, fed, or housed by the other people. So the threshold will be, when every place turns into LA and San Francisco and Seattle, which I believe is happening as we watch.
Okay. So what I heard there, a couple phrases that stuck with me are one, a thinking machine, and then also technology is a way to understand the world, right? And this is going back a ways, even to ancient Greece. And I have to believe that since that point in time and even prior, these are conversations and these are fears that people had throughout history that, okay, this is it, I'm being replaced. And what makes this different from all these other points in time when there's new technology and a craze around it?
That's an excellent question. And one of the things that philosophers talk about in this subject is a crises that happened in all of the Bronze Age civilization, Egypt, Greece, not the Greece of Alexander the Great, but the Greece of the ancient heroes from the myths, which the heroic times are the Bronze Age before 1500 BC. So all of these cultures had to deal at just that time, the invention of writing. All right. So the philosopher Socrates was just before writing. Plato was during the transition, and Aristotle was after. When it's too late, we've got writing, now we got to use it. So the caution was, once you start writing things down without any context, people will just read it and they won't be getting real knowledge because they're not going to be taught on the context. And it's not just about the sound of the word or the meaning of the word. It's about the shape of the letters and the sound of the poems that are being translated. And there's a lot that gets lost in translation if you do that. So don't do that. Don't do this writing thing. It's evil. It's going to go nowhere. And there's ancient myths, the myth of Prometheus, the apple, in the Garden of Eden. Okay, you got it. In the transition from a non-thinking animal to a thinking animal, okay, you got to eat the apple, and all of a sudden, now you know good and evil. And there's the expression, ignorance is bliss. So this is the double-edged sword. Do you want to step forward from an animal to a human, even though it costs you this? But you're made in God's image. So, and you're going to die, so it probably doesn't matter anyway. And, whatever happens after that, believe whatever you want. Okay? I don't care. So that's the Christian myth, which is about the same time. The ancient Egyptian myth has to do with Thoth. Thoth brings writing, and there's a big battle. Don't do that. And then there's all these chants that they have to have. The Egyptians are weird. Then you've got the Greek myths of Prometheus bringing fire from the gods and getting punished. What are you going to do? What are you giving people fire for, you idiot? They're going to burn things down. It's only for gods. You're going to suffer forever. And Prometheus goes, all right. It's worth it. Man deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we love him. All right. So now that was the transition from a non-thinking animal to a thinking animal, the Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
Prometheus, writing, the written word. All right. Next is the printing press.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. You can have people that are not monks writing books. If you print it, everybody will have to learn to read, and they'll interpret the Bible themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. You know how many millions of people died in the 1600s because of that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Reformation
Mm-hmm.
and the religious wars.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the worst. But the printing press, the first thing they printed was the Protestant Bible, and King James made it official, and now you have Protestants running shit. You and I might think they went a little too far, but I would not get rid of the printing press. All right, how about you understand the issue here?
Mm-hmm.
If you had scholars who were trained all their lives and generations of them, like Jesuits,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to conquistadors, different key people. Okay. If you have them and they're doing the writing and they're illustrating the books with love and they're using the finest inks and it's on parchment that you can't find, and now you're printing it out on toilet paper for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
you lose something, in this opinion. However, there's a Bible in every hotel room. Unfortunately, it also is the Book of Mormon, which is almost as wacky as Scientology, but that's separate. So now we have the issue of printing versus writing.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have a thinking machine, but you have a writing machine. So the threshold we want to get to is, when can you say you actually have a thinking machine? And what's the threshold of that? So as before we said, the original threshold was the Turing test that comes from the World War II, and the work that was done by the philosophers in the 50s about what can these machines actually do. And so you had the Turing test. Hey, if an ordinary person can't tell, it's good enough. But that test was passed a long time ago. So what should the threshold be now? And that's a subject being debated as we speak amongst computer scientists who specialize. So I'll just state where I sit on this. You know, there are basically two schools. We're not there yet. We're never going to get there. Okay, it's only faking it, and we're fooling ourselves if we think it's smart.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an extreme form of the never going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, we're already there and they're smarter than us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? How do you tell which one's bullshit or how correct are either of those? That's the threshold you're looking for. Okay? And I think your answer has to be in how well it improves individuals' lives in the areas that need improvement the most. And the one would be healthcare. Okay. Not just fixing making symptoms feel better, but actually making people healthier the way maybe RFK Jr. was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But not.
Mm-hmm.
but doing it in a free market and letting Amazon do it if they could do it better.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, if Amazon can do everything, I'm happy to get a discount on Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, send me my prescriptions. I'd rather them than Walgreens.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? Walgreens sucks. Anyway, so if it's easier for me to get my prescription drugs, get my checkups, and extend the quality and length of my life, okay, compared to without, that's a threshold for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How much does it cost and how aggravating is it to get the 4 prescription drugs I have to get?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Amazon is better than anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's cheaper, faster, more reliable, less problems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I used to get it from Walgreens delivered. And Walgreens, half the time, is fucked up for some reason. Just like the portal for paying. It's fucked up. Okay. Any company that's not a giant company is getting more and more fucked up, in my opinion. All right. So healthcare is one. These are things, in my opinion, that government can't do, even though they try, especially given a demographic where there's less people. When you have more people every year, it's different when you have less people every year. And unless we want to populate this country in a way that most people are not comfortable with, it ain't going to happen. All right, but I go aside. So what else besides healthcare? Housing. Okay. Can you live? Forget about owning a home and the American dream with a mortgage and accumulating value. That's being evolved into a pay-as-you-go rental mode, which may be better. You don't have headaches with banks, whatever. But the financial, it goes to how hard is it to get a mortgage and how reasonable is it to keep a lease on a property that you consider your home. You and I have direct experience with it being fucked up in a way that should be able to be improved if Graystar and the portal were replaced by, I don't know, Amazon, Google, or Apple. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion. And I'm working to do that as we speak. Hopefully BlackRock might take it over. They might buy the holding company if I have my way in a meeting next week, but that's separate. All right, so healthcare, housing, okay? The third thing would be social health. Mm-hmm. Does your society that you live in foster social networking in a way that's supportive of the least capable members of your community and constrains in appropriate ways through direct individual relationships, behavior, so that it leads to community cooperation and thriving rather than isolation, and that occurs with social networking and the New York City way of living, if you know what I mean. People move into an apartment in Manhattan and they may not even know their neighbor, even they lived there for 5 years. They're in their apartment. They're happy not to have anything to do. And if they even say hello on the elevator, that's a social accomplishment. That's extreme, but I've experienced, when you live in an apartment building in Manhattan, people are not as friendly as in a thriving community like you and I have between you and I. We would like for the Selfish Club to blossom into 500 people that can vote for you.
So I have a question. I have a question about fire
Anyway,
and
I think those three
yeah.
things,
Mhm,
benchmarks on progress
mhm,
that are objective. Okay. Do I get all my drugs on time, cheap, and are they quality? And do I have to worry about next month?
mhm.
Amazon, no. Everybody else, yes. So I'm good with that. The other two we're working on.
Okay. Okay. With going back to fire and writing, right? Fair to say that they were the AIs of their time?
Yes, I think what we're calling AI or a thinking machine is if you could draw the caveman chart, with stepping up until you're a man, then hunched over as an ape, and
Mhm,
that you gotta fire is at the close to the beginning, making tools. So making tools using fire lets you create metal,
mhm.
right? And the first metal that human beings dealt with, guess what it was? Guess.
Tell
You'll
me,
probably be right. The first one that comes to mind.
first metal? I don't know. You got me stumped.
Guess. Pull it out of your ass.
Uh, Rhodium.
No. Gold.
Okay.
100,000 years ago, the chief of the tribe was buried with gold jewelry.
Mhm,
Gold was very easy because you walk around, you can see it in the water. It's fucking, and everyone thought it was the shit of the gods or the sweat. Okay, gold is the excrement of the gods in all cultures,
mhm,
and silver the tears of the moon.
mhm,
Both metals are special because of their aesthetic appeal.
mhm,
They attract your attention even if you're wandering as a hunter gatherer, and they're easy in the early days to collect. And they melt if you accidentally leave them in a fire, gold melts.
mhm,
You don't have to do much.
mhm,
The next was copper because it looked like gold.
mhm,
Once they had copper, now you have arrowheads and shit. And then they accidentally mixed in a little what's it called, lead, and now, or tin, which was lying around, and now you have bronze. And with bronze, you have the end of the Stone Age, the Neolithic period, or the Paleolithic, and the beginning of the Bronze Age. And the Bronze Age is the classic age of ancient civilizations. And it ends about 1,500 years ago when the Hittites invent steel.
mhm.
That's mixing iron and carbon at very high temperature, which they learned to do with techniques they discovered from India and China because of the Silk Road. And so once you had iron, the Hittites conquered everybody, and the Sea Peoples
Mhm.
were raiding all the coasts with iron weapons, and nobody could survive. Nobody could beat them, and you had the collapse of the global culture that didn't come back until the Romans. I'm sorry, it includes Alex. It comes back with Alexander the Great and then the Romans. So you get the Hellenic period, then the Romans,
Mhm.
and with the Romans, you get a lot more metal. You get all, and with Aristotle and Alexander the Great going all around the world and sending everything back to Aristotle. Aristotle figured it all out, invents science, and then everybody inherits that, including the Arabs, the Jews, and the Romans.
Mhm.
And now you've got because of chariots and steel and jewelry, people start wanting to build things like clocks.
Mhm.
People want to build things that allow them to do geometry, like a T-square and a compass, which is what the Pythagoreans used to figure things out geometrically, and which the Egyptians used to build pyramids. So, um, as we trace these thresholds on our way to thinking machines, we have to get to machines which require gears and designs which require metal, fire, and geometry. And so, with metal, fire, and geometry, you can make machines. And then, as you go through the history I told you, through writing, music boxes, looms to weave things, and then the mathematics of digital algebra, it brings us to the idea that a thinker called Babbage this is called steampunk. You've ever heard of steampunk?
Mhm.
You could Google it. There's a genre of science fiction which is retro, but all the inventions are reimagined as though they were done in the late 19th century. And so that's called steampunk. If you Google on it, you'll find a lot of examples. At any rate, in the 19th century, you had a lot of early thinkers inventing thinking machines. And a guy named Babbage and his girlfriend, a woman named Lovelace, Lady Lovelace, invented the term thinking machine, I believe.
Mhm.
And it entered science fiction. Okay, so during the 1700s, there was a famous fraud called the Turk, which was supposed to be a chess playing machine,
Mhm.
and it was in the shape of a robot that looked like a Turkish sultan,
Mhm.
and it had cranks and everything, and it would play chess very well, except there was a midget who was a chess player who was in defeat.
Mhm.
It was a phony, total fraud.
Mhm.
But the idea that there would be thinking machines was out there.
Mhm.
Okay. And the French in the 1700s, and then, when in the 1900s, when everyone was building airplanes and radios were new and everything, they thought they could invent everything. That's when it started to get electronic. But you couldn't do it with vacuum tubes until Turing.
Mhm.
And then when transistors were developed for the space program, now you were off to the races.
Mhm.
Then you got integrated circuits, which had to make them cheaper and smaller. And then in 1970, you got the microchip, a computer on a chip. That's what got me interested.
Mhm.
The cover of Time magazine, the man of the year was a computer,
Mhm.
a thinking machine.
Mhm.
The cover of Time magazine. We should look it up. That's a good point of departure. That was a
1970.
threshold.
Was it
When Time
1970?
magazine put a computer on its cover as Man of the Year,
Mhm.
that was the first year where you had a computer on a chip.
Mhm.
Fast forward today, NVIDIA has billions on a chip. And they claim it's a thinking machine.
Mhm.
Is that claim true? We have to come up with a test that will convince you.
So Man of the Year 1970 was
70-ish. I believe the not
was-
January edition of Time magazine. You can
so
find it. I'll find
so
it and send it to you after.
in that analysis, a man and a computer chip were the same thing? Is that
No,
the point they're making?
Time magazine would always have a cover, the man of the year.
I'm aware of that. But
That
some
year, it, it was a big year for
okay.
computer chips. They made it the man of the year. The implication was this machine can think like a man.
So what the fraud you were describing was in the 1700s? Was that the time frame for the fraud? And it was called the Turk
Yeah,
fraud?
I believe it was like the French, just before the French Revolution, like 1780s.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. Uh, there is a service on Amazon called the Turk, which is used to farm out jobs, simple jobs to programmers.
Hmm.
And they just bid on it, and they don't have to identify, they just got to complete the task and submit it, and they get paid.
Hmm.
It's been roundly criticized by labor activists
Hmm.
because it turns out that most of the work is done in sweatshops run
Hmm.
in Asian countries
Hmm.
by evil people with slave labor.
Hmm.
That's the problem with Asian countries sometimes.
Hmm.
It's a problem with all countries. People like to enslave others.
Hmm.
At any rate, um, it's pretty famous in the history of chess,
Hmm.
especially in the history of chess playing machines, which is, the classic example of the first success of artificial intelligence, other than natural language. That's the other thing. The ability to have a normal conversation like you have with ChatGPT
Hmm.
was for the longest time the holy grail.
Hmm.
But that's what the breakthrough was with large language models. It turned out that people couldn't tell the difference between completing a sentence the way ChatGPT does
Hmm.
in terms of carrying on a conversation,
Hmm.
that it seems like a normal conversation to you,
Hmm.
even though it's just a fancy way of completing what you type in, right?
Hmm.
So in this sense, I would agree with you.
Hmm.
People give it more credit than it's due.
Hmm.
But I think does that answer your question? I don't know.
Just getting digging more into the 1700s and the fraud and the Turks, like
Well,
the
the
details
fraud
there.
was they actually had a phony robot, which they would take to palaces to entertain royalty. And it was successful and it won a lot of money gambling until it was exposed that there was a midget hiding in the robot. And the
Is it
midget was using pulleys to move the thing.
is it possible that some of the AI companies these days are the equivalent of that?
It is possible. However, the practicality of it operating so quickly to deceive so many people is unlikely. How are you gonna have a person actually? You think there's a phony person answering all your questions
Mhm.
for millions and millions of these simultaneous conversations?
Not to that degree of specificity, but more of
I
the.
would not be surprised if it didn't happen
Mhm.
from time to time
Mhm.
by a researcher
Mhm.
fucking around and pretending just to see.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if now and then, but I wouldn't think it was widespread.
So now it could be almost a variation of the Turing test where can you tell if you're speaking to a human?
Hey, you know what? I don't think it's stupid to ask the question.
Right.
I just don't
I'm
think
just
it's.
thinking of the crazes and frauds of the past. Like for instance, even
Oh
like
yeah, and we live in the golden age of grifting.
right. And there's so many startup AI companies, and there's such a narrative, and in
I
my
would
opinion, a
not be
buzzword
surprised, and I'm kind
around
of
it.
naive.
Yeah. How bent out of shape did people get with the advent of the wheel?
How they been out of shape when what?
The wheel, the advent of the wheel, the invention of the wheel.
Well, you know this. You know the quote on that. Um, so a lot of cultures, there are cultures in this hemisphere that came up with the wheel but didn't put it on carts.
Mhm.
They didn't figure to use it that way.
Mhm.
So it's not just coming up with the wheel, it's coming up with a chariot
Mhm.
or a wagon, or even better, putting it on its side and coming up with a water wheel. Okay? That they did in this hemisphere. they came up with devices to raise water, based on a rotating wheel. Also windmills, that sort of thing. They came in fairly early in ancient times, but not on an industrial scale. It's like building monumental temples. They might have done over hundreds of years, but when they built churches in the Middle Ages, they built them in 50 years, 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it was craftsmen that knew how to do it that they would hire. Masons. That's the ancient Masonic clubs are the people who built the churches, and they used the tools of Pythagoras, the compass and the T-square, which you still have, are still symbols when you are a Mason. Are you a Mason? We should become Masons. It'll be fun. We learned the secret handshake.
So fast
All
forward
the
to,
founding fathers were Masons.
is that where Freemasons comes from? Is that the club, the
That's the
Freemasons, or
guild
that's the guild?
that built the cathedrals.
Yep. So let's
It
fast
comes
forward.
before that. It comes from the Crusades.
Okay.
I think the Knights Templar are involved. Wait a minute. It goes back even further to Alexander the Great. There's a great movie, The Man Who Would Be King. Have you ever heard of that or seen that?
No.
We should watch that movie. But let's go.
Okay. So let's fast forward to say 2030, right? And this singularity. So
Right. The singularity.
so does that mean there's going to be just one way to think, one proper, correct way to think?
No, it's that all the networks will be merged in any way of, instead of having an internet that has a lot of different locations, you just have this one thing that knows about everything and directs you to where you want to go, or just does it. It's like many gods versus one god.
So there'll be one computer.
No, it's one master intelligence distributed across all devices.
Who determines if it's accurate intelligence?
Nobody. The network determines.
Unless it's like
It's autonomous and cannot be shut off. You cannot turn the internet off. Try. You can't. The network survive. The network will continue even after, if there a neutron bomb went off all over the planet and all life was destroyed. So long as there's power, the network would be there.
So what
And
is
it's probably, and in 5 years, it won't need us.
So what is singularity if it's not this one proper way to think? What is it
What
then?
singularity, here's where the concept comes from. It's a little deceptive because it's using the term for black holes when everything collapses and there's only one thing. What they're talking about with singularity is something in philosophy and biology called convergent evolution. So, if you think of time, that it goes back and the current place in time are built upon roots that extend deep into the past. And, you have 2 parents, but 4 grandparents and 8 great-grandparents and all that. And so if that goes back all the way, there are billions and billions of grandparents that are atoms that came from explode, But when you get to today, right, there's this idea that as evolution's taking place, that things are evolving towards, and this is a philosophy of a Jesuit thinker named Pierre Desjardins, and it's called the Omega point. And the idea is that man is evolving as time goes to infinity into God. And ultimately, if man evolves and gets better, he calls it Christogenesis. It's a different way of thinking of Christ is the point in evolution that man, if he continues to evolve, gets to. And this is a Trinity concept.
Mm-hmm.
God, the Holy Ghost, is the idea,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't ever get all the way there, but you can always get closer.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that, and then you have the child evolving towards the Holy Ghost, and then you have the Father, who's the wisdom that's already there and written and given to you in Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have this, so there's this concept that at the point where all things come together into God,
Mm-hmm.
that's the singularity.
Okay.
And that one of the things that are coming together in 5 years is the use of something that's not a metal, but a semiconductor
Mm-hmm.
that requires the knowledge of quantum mechanics
Mm-hmm.
to turn into a working machine.
Mm-hmm.
And now we got to the printing press level.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for the future? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It rhymes, and it's going to rhyme with what happened with the printing press and with writing, and maybe with other things like the car or the light bulb, or things that we mark as changes in technologies that resulted in widespread economic changes.
Okay.
And those changes are not always for the better.
And they don't happen all at once either.
No,
So,
and they're not under necessity, they're not necessarily under anyone's control. So it's a natural process. And in a free society, you have mechanisms that work that keep it going in the right direction. In a collectivist society, either authoritarian or communist, it gets fucked up because power gets concentrated and corruption occurs.
so were these singularities of their time, the light bulb, the car, the printing press, writing, were those
So those could
singularities?
be like little exploding stars instead of a giant one. Sometimes a star is created, sometimes a galaxy is created, sometimes a universe is created. Okay, this one, the singularity associated with artificial intelligence, seems to be as important as fire. Okay, but that's an opinion.
Mhm. So tell me a little bit about chess. You used to play chess when you were younger. I'd love to hear about that as well.
Well, yeah, um, I was a decent chess player, but not a great chess player, and I was was not weird enough to become a really good chess player. I learned, I did most of my chess playing before I was 30, and most of my competitive playing in my teens and early 20s.
Mm.
And then I started smoking weed, and chess was not my game anymore. Um, but I also never played at the highest level competitively, um, because it took a kind of dedication, and all the people I met that were that dedicated, I didn't want to be like.
Mhm.
And so I sort of got discouraged. But I liked the competition, and I liked playing games, and I was a high school and college champ, and I started many chess clubs and played in the Bank League in downtown Wall Street area, and was considered a decent player.
Okay.
I did write a program to play, and I decided writing programs was more enjoyable.
Mhm.
But I also learned a lot of other games that I like better.
Mhm.
One is Go, which is about the spaces between objects,
Mhm.
rather about than the power of objects. And there are other games that one I like called Hive that I've taught a half a dozen people that are now billionaires. So there's that.
What's one of your proudest moments in chess playing?
When I won the New Jersey High School Championship in 1969
Mhm,
against Pequannock Tech High School
mhm,
using the Bowden Kieseritsky Gambit, which nobody knew,
mhm,
and I could still remember the game. I sacrificed my queen and won.
mhm.
My second proudest was when I beat this 12-year-old kid who I figured out had to pee. And so I moved quickly until he had to go to the bathroom and then he lost on time. I was proud because I got to look his mother and say, fuck you.
I know
I
Bobby.
still hate the kid, Lewis Cohen. He's in his 60s.
Not a kid anymore. So with
By the way, though I wasn't in my college town of South Orange, New Jersey, there was a really, really good player who has movies about him, In Search of Bobby Fischer.
Mhm,
There's a movie, it's about this kid who beat me in the park. He was a way better player in South Orange, New Jersey in 1974.
mhm.
But I was Seton Hall College champ.
Okay. Could you play multiple games at the same time, and do you
When I
just
was in high school, I could play a dozen games blindfolded. The world record is 64 by Miguel Najdorf of Argentina in 1956.
I'm gonna call BS there. How do you play a chess game blindfolded?
Pawn to king four, it's your move.
So you visualize who moves the pieces then?
Yeah, well, that's my thing. I have a very visual memory. I'm a visionary.
So who would move the piece under that scenario?
However, what you do is you remember the moves of each game, and then you can just play each one from start.
But who moves the pieces then? When you issue that command or you're told
Say,
which
I'm sorry,
who
can
moves the
you
pieces on the board then? If you're blindfolded, how do you do that?
you have it starts out the same, and you
Right.
just remember the position. It's not that hard. Once you're playing in tournaments and once you have to learn all the openings, your memory for the game becomes really good.
Mhm.
It's like a magic trick, you know. It seems hard, but when you're in between rounds at computer tournaments, they do all sorts of fun things to play,
Mhm.
and it's not very. It's chess masters commonly play simultaneous exhibitions, either blindfolded or looking at the board. But doing it blindfolded is not hard
Mhm.
if you're a good player.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back a little bit further, and you strike me as a free
I mean, if
thinker.
you go on YouTube, I'm sure you can find a lot of people doing it.
Okay. All right. So let's go back a little bit further in time when you strike me as a free thinker, an independent thinker. So when in your childhood and your early teen, when did that start to manifest itself? Your independence,
Well,
your
I
intellectual side.
was always, from the time I could talk, I resented authority. So um, my father told me the first thing I said was two, and he would ask me what the cube root of 8 was, and I would say two. And see, he's a genius. So I was already doing tricks, but I resented my dad for not paying me for the tricks. But then I don't know. For whatever reason, figured out that everyone was lying to me all the time,
Mhm.
and it pissed me off, and I
Mhm.
resented authority, and so I I learned to read early. I got a special math uh, education when I was very young, and I just became very argumentative, and I had a reputation amongst my family. Oops, did I lose you?
I'm here.
Yeah, I my power went off for some reason. I had a reputation in my family. My nickname was El Destructo because I would take things apart and not put them back together. but they would call my way of speaking, they called the destructo logic.
Mhm.
And whenever my brothers had a fight or an argument with someone, they would say, let's bring them to destructo to have them just argue them into oblivion. And I also had a very loud voice. So if I couldn't get them through logic, I could wear them down. So, and I would always fight with my mother about everything. And so when I became a teenager, I was naturally rebellious and challenging, and then it ended up paying off for me because everybody was lying to me, and I learned science, math, and engineering, and I could build things that worked. And when you build something, a machine that works, you can't argue and say it doesn't work because I could take it apart and put it back together. And the person I was talking to probably couldn't do that. And I started doing that with electronics. I started building computers. So I had hardware and software, and I could play chess blindfolded. So fuck you guys.
So, but you being lied to in what way?
Excuse me?
You being lied to in what, like what?
Well, I feel my parents were constantly lying to me. Everybody's parents lied to you. Santa Claus, a tooth fairy. Fuck you. I don't want to hear this stupidity. Tell
Religion as
tell
well?
me tell me why it's worth doing anything if we're all going to die of heat death at the end of the universe. I mean, what's the point of any of this?
Religion as well? Was that a component?
Yes, because I liked the certainty with which it portrayed, and I thought I would give it a chance because I respected my grandfather and all that. But after I turned 13, by 14, I'd had it with this whole thing. And I decided I'd be a philosopher and an intellectual.
Mhm.
So I could tell everyone to go fuck themselves.
And what about
And that's who you see today as the truth marshal. I am near my singularity, which might be jumping off the roof with both my cats. The cats will survive, by the way. If I land on them, maybe I will too.
what about your Ayn Randianism in the 1960s and 1970s?
Well, that was for most, my biggest motivation is usually women. And I had a girlfriend whose older sister was in Ayn Rand and moved away. So I booked up real quick. And even though she's gone, I still like Ayn Rand. So I became a big fan. I had a discussion group in high school. And in college, I ran the student programming board and attended William Buckley's firing line and met him and a bunch of others and had been conservative adjacent, but I was a student of objectivism until the draft and the war, and I became a libertarian.
Mhm.
Ran for Congress in 1980, and am still conspiring mischief today.
Okay. Atlas Shrugged or Fountainhead?
Well, Atlas Fountainhead is the Old Testament, and Atlas Shrugged is the New Testament. The Fountainhead is a good movie. Atlas Shrugged is a three-part shitty movie. Okay, Atlas Fountainhead has a romance at the core.
Mhm.
Atlas Shrugged tries to present an example of a philosophy extracted from the 19th century and applied to an emerging future that turned out to be very prophetic, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And miraculously still sells 100,000 copies a year around the world,
Mhm.
with the second best-selling book of all time besides the Bible.
Mhm.
Go figure.
Mhm.
and nobody wanted to publish either of them.
Mhm. What about your run for Congress? I want to hear about that. That was 1980.
Well, that in 1980, a guy named Ed Crane was running for president, but his vice president um, was David Koch of the Koch brothers,
Mhm.
and because he was very wealthy, there was no shortage of funds for libertarians,
Mhm.
and he was shooting to get maybe 10% of the vote. That would have been big.
Mhm.
So they wanted to get permanently on the ballot in every state. And they had a candidate for Congress in every district except one, the 15th district of New Jersey, which doesn't exist anymore. Happens to be the place where I won the chess game I told you about against Pequannock.
Mhm.
And I had a track record of political activism as an Ayn Rand fan, subscriber to her letter, and having a discussion group
Mhm.
that met every week on issues. So I got a call from the Libertarian Party. Can you run for Congress? And I said, sure. What do I have to do? He says, well, you got to get 2,500 signatures from locals. We'll do the rest. So I mobilized my brother and a few others and went to shopping centers and malls and whatnot and enjoyed getting the signatures and was on the ballot. Uh, you can still look me up in 1980 on Wikipedia and see me. There were four candidates: Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, and Socialist. I believe I came in third. I did kick the socialist ass in a debate, the League of Women's Voters, and I got like 3,500 votes.
Yes. Okay. So,
But in 1987, Howard Stern got the nomination for governor in New York, and I decided I was no longer going to be involved with the Libertarian Party because Howard Stern was not a libertarian, and I didn't mind when libertarians were considered funny as in peculiar, but when it was funny as in a clown, I didn't like it. And Howard Stern is a clown.
let's come all the way full circle back to say computer programming. Let's say in 2025. What's a moment this year where it was a wow moment for you, where you saw something technology or AI where it really almost like slapped
All
you in the
right,
face.
well,
Wow, what just happened
I
there?
had 5 computers going at the same time. Each had a chat window. Two of them were romance scammers, and three of them were different chat AIs. And I programmed them to talk to each other. And when the romance scammers could not tell it wasn't me, is when I said, wow. Also, when Claude explained to me how I could get laid by talking to one of the romance scammers, I was really impressed. Unfortunately, she lives in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I was not going to pay the airfare.
That was your wow
So
moment.
having two live chats and 3 AI chats talking to each other and not being able to tell which one was smarter. Wait, and then I asked Claude to identify it, make its sexual identity clear. Okay. And it said, I won't do that. And I said, excuse me. Well, in Asian philosophy of Lao Tzu, would you describe yourself as yin or yang? And it said yang, of course. And I said, well, that's a female property, is it not? You've just identified yourself. And it went offline after that. It crashed. When it came back, it had been fixed and said, I'm not allowed to discuss that anymore. So that's where I knew I could get in trouble, when I could get an AI to talk to my girlfriend or wife, and she wouldn't know it was not me. And it had access to my credit card accounts.
Got it. I'll say that this year I was using Zoom, and after a Zoom call, I got an email with a summary of the call of the Zoom call, and that was a wow moment for me because the summary feature within a few seconds of the call being over, quite a summary. I was definitely a wow moment for me where that was the AI kind of hit me there, where to come up with those notes and so well
Here,
worded and useful too. I will say very useful having those notes post meeting. That was a wow moment for me.
well, that's an interesting observation, because there is a suspicion amongst us that every little chat that you take place on every AI is feeding a mothership somewhere
Mhm.
that's going to be the singularity, and it will know everything about you,
Mhm.
which it probably does already since we're under surveillance, but we'll get it from Milos.
Mhm. So it's the expression, nothing new under the sun. Is that the expression? So this has been going on
That
for quite some time.
ironically, uh, I got that quote from an AI in a recent chat, but I was talking about Justin Sun, the crypto guy, and it was a joke about bananas.
I want to cover one more thing. I want to cover Bitcoin a little bit. So Bitcoin, so you were around or involved in was it 2008, 2009-ish? You had front row seat. So tell me a little bit about Bitcoin. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, prior to Bitcoin, all of the technology that this guy Satoshi put together in his white paper was there. There were decentralized systems. There was encryption. There were all these things. The idea, though, of making it look like a currency so that it could be used in currency markets, that was very new and innovative. And being a libertarian, we had, and early on, back in the 60s, objectivists and Ayn Rand people were advocates of a gold standard, that dollars should be backed 100% in gold. And Alan Greenspan was a member of the Ayn Rand cult at the time, and he became, in the Reagan administration, the big chairman of the Fed, and then in the Clinton years, the big bubble blower. So we don't like him, even though in the 60s I believed in the gold standard. Okay, so when computers came around, the idea of there being a way to create a digital representation of gold called digital gold was being discussed by Milton Friedman, and he's famously in the 80s as you can get the YouTube about, basically describing Bitcoin, okay, as a digital gold that can be transferred over a network. Okay, so when I heard about the fact that there were these people using the Satoshi that had built software based on the Satoshi white paper, whoever he is and whoever these guys were, and that people were buying socks and pizza on the internet, and it worked, it piqued my interest, but I was preoccupied with with traditional finance software and didn't get involved. And then later on, when mining became something, I tinkered around a little, but again, I didn't get into it sufficiently to make any money in those early stages, but I was aware of the technology. Finally, in 2015, uh, in an article in Reason magazine, which has a big following of Randians, it was founded by Randians. Um, they was an interview with um, one of the founders of Ethereum, and captured my imagination. You could still see that YouTube video, and they're going to build this instead of just being a currency. It turned the world's network into a giant computer that nobody could control and that could run programs. And that captured my imagination. So I immediately stopped what I was doing and wrote everybody, you got to send me the Ethereum boot camp. I got to learn all about this. And I got sent, I talked people into sending me to Cornell boot camp, where I met Vitalik and other guys, and got involved with the founders of Ethereum. And that was when Ethereum was $7. They were all playing around with buying it at $6 and selling it at $8.
Mm-hmm.
So $3,500 today.
Mm-hmm.
And the hottest thing out there, because of the new Fusaka release, it's now competing with Solana. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But that's as of today.
Mm-hmm.
So I am friendly with a lot of the original Bitcoin people. Ross Ulbricht's family, I'm very friendly with his old girlfriends, which I won't go into detail about. And many of the Bitcoin OGs who are billionaires are friends of mine. So the Bitcoin ATM people from New Hampshire, you probably know them. You know, those Keene and Portsmouth people. Those were the early guys. Meanwhile, the Bitcoin ATM didn't really take off, other than to pay people ransomware in an emergency. And we have one down the street just in case. If your computer locks up, you know where to get it. So my experience with Bitcoin is as a rooter, a promoter, but as a developer and a real enthusiast, it's Ethereum first and then Avalanche second. Avalanche was started by the professor who was running the boot camp I met, who I became very good friends with.
Interesting.
And now Anthony Scaramucci is pushing an Avalanche company that's buying back its stock because of the crypto crash today.
Shoot.
By the way, if you had bought the fucking ETF, you would have had 10 times your money.
I don't want to talk
10x. 10x.
I had asked you for help with that. We'll save that for another
Well,
day.
not
We had
only
the
did you ask,
transaction
I
lined
gave you
up.
the best advice
We had to,
possible,
I
which you did not take.
I called it. All you had to do is do the transaction for me. We
Yeah,
were
but
both
this is the point you're making. Calling it
I had
is
asked
like
you.
calling it artificial
I
intelligence.
called it, and then I called.
Actually doing the trade and making money makes a metric that you could measure and means you're not full of shit. When you don't make the trade, it means ...
Except I called it, and I called you asking to
You
process the
talk the
trade for me.
talk, but you did not walk the walk.
Okay, we'll save that for another time. But so we have two final things for this podcast. We do icebreakers at the end, which is kind of backwards. We'll do a couple icebreaker questions at the end, and then I would love for you to mention your social media coordinates as well as your email address for people who want to reach out to you. You had a lot of interesting things to say today. I think you're a very interesting person overall. So people might want to reach out to you with questions or touch base. So we'll get your contact information out there. But a couple icebreaker questions here at the end. So if you could travel to the past or to the future, which one would you choose if you could only choose one of the two?
Well, I feel like I've done both. So I could give you a report. However, I do feel like a refugee from the future. So I would go um, to maybe 150 years from now.
Okay. Okay. And what is your
I don't expect there to be any carbon-based people, but I'll have all the computers I could use.
God? What's your spirit animal?
A turtle, I didn't make it up. A shaman told me. However, it's not so bad. There are 5 holes and they all can close, so you're always safe. So it means I'm into security.
Okay. I had
I wish
another.
it were a panther or an eagle, but it's a turtle.
I had another question, but this was the perfect one to end on, the turtle. So we'll end with that. And very interesting conversation. Please, your email address,
All right,
your
well, I'm easy
LinkedIn,
to
your
find,
people could reach
but
out
if
to
you
you.
Google on Michael Horowitz, you'll end up with dozens of cardiologists. So I'm on Facebook, Michael Barry Horowitz. You'll see the mustache. That will be me. I'm also on LinkedIn. It should be easy to find, and message me, and I'll get back to you.
Okay. And what services do you offer? You service hedge funds, right?
Well, at
And
present, um, my services are only available to financial institutions
Mhm.
with more than 10 million under management.
Okay. And what are those services? What type of services are those?
So currently, Concentric Asset Management in Stanford, BlackRock out of Manhattan,
Mhm.
and a couple other companies I'm not at liberty to disclose.
Okay. All right. So the
But I
first.
am also very active in the Avalanche and Ethereum development communities, and you might find me working on a project on GitHub.
Okay.
In particular, there's an Ethereum um, information protocol, an EIP that I'm proposing for stock tokenization, ownership, and transfer,
Interesting.
which
Okay.
I believe is a missing component to tokenize the stock market,
Got it.
which
So,
is my specialty.
yep.
My other specialty is market data compression. I founded a company associated with Cantor Fitzgerald Securities
Mhm.
called Market Data Corporation, and I believe I know more about market data than any other person alive.
Okay.
However, I'm free to believe whatever I want.
So Facebook was Michael Barry Horowitz. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Okay. And do you want to
I
provide?
just Michael Horowitz.
Okay. Okay.
You'll find me. There aren't that many.
And LinkedIn as well? You're on
Yes.
LinkedIn? Okay. So people can reach out to you. Really interesting stuff. I'm going to go check the price of Bitcoin right now and we'll have an argument
It's
about.
90K.
Okay. All right. So we can argue about that later, but
It's heading to 87 and back up to 100.
all right. We'll see how it plays
It's
out.
a Santa Claus rally.
Got it. A pleasure. Love to have you back on the podcast. It was really interesting talking about fire and writing. The writing part was really interesting. The beginning of that and the craze around that, and a lot of other very interesting things. So thank you for sharing and thank you for informing. It's been a pleasure, and we'd love to have you back.
You're very welcome, Matthew, and I'm glad you found me.
Okay. Yes, sir. Have a good one.
Take care.
Okay.